Hello, welcome. I can hear an echo now. There we go. How are people doing today? Welcome. I have quite the collection of things on my desk today because once again we are doing a 2-donut Saturday. I don't know if I can keep these up. I found out that they are going to be doing these only 1 month seasonal flavors at the donut shop for the rest of the year, and I really don't think I can sustain eating 2 donuts a week. Yes, so we might have to be more selective with the flavors. Maybe I will go back to having patrons vote on which ones I eat. But welcome. How is everyone doing? Do we have people here? I don't have the chat, so I don't actually know if anybody is here yet. But maybe we can do the map thing. I think it is up. So if you put where you are at in the chat, like where in the world, your city or your state or your country, then it should pop up on the map. Oh, thank you everybody for the compliments of the bow. The bow is actually built into this dress. This is a dress that I made for a Marvelous Miss Maisel costume. It's like 100% based on her outfit, but it is also one of my patriotic themed dresses, and we thought we would go with sort of a patriotic backdrop today. Woo, look at all of those. Is super cool dress a location? Because it popped up on the map. I wonder if it put it somewhere. Hello, welcome. We have a nice smattering of US time zones. It's really time that I get my friends in Hawaii and Alaska to start tuning into these just so that we can like get more of the US time zones. Although I don't even know if you could see Hawaii on this map. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining and spending some time this Saturday. I had listener questions today, and I also could have talked about unemployment, but I just really wanted to talk about trade deficits after watching the second and final presidential debate this week in the US. There was a whole section on trade deficits, particularly our trade deficit with China, because President Trump has been very obsessed with trade deficits and kind of holds a theory that they are bad, which is contrary to pretty much any economist in the world. But I kind of want to talk about why the United States trade deficit is extremely unique, and also why trade deficit sounds bad. Deficit sounds like, I don't know, it's something that we are lacking. But in fact, similar to how the US has a lot of debt held by other countries, the deficit has something to do with that, and it also has a lot to do with if you are an American and you hold foreign assets, like, for example, you have international funds in your 401k or your IRA, then guess what? You are contributing to the trade deficit. So I thought I would talk a little bit about that. But yes, once again, 2 donuts latitude. It's I am just trying to keep up with this seasonal onslaught of flavors from the donut shop. I will also say that I was like, oh, I can't have 2 donuts a week. Although last night we were watching Bake Off, and I was like, I need something sweet while I watch Bake Off, and went through all the cabinets, looked in the fridge, couldn't really find anything, was considering just having like a spoonful of peanut butter in order to enjoy something sweet, and then ended up being like, I live next to a donut shop. So I went down to the donut shop in my pajamas like 40 minutes before they closed. They were already like cleaning up and everything, and they just hooked me up with a donut, which I ate very quickly while watching Bake Off. So yes, there are 2 donuts. The donuts today are almond roca, which I have been informed is some sort of toffee, like chocolate covered toffee candy, I guess. So this is the almond roca. It was prettier when I got it, so you know, you're gonna have to bear in mind that it's been sitting for several hours since I got it. And then this is the one I'm really excited about. which is sour green apple, which is like all of my donuts as well as sour things are like my favorite category. So I'm really excited about this one. The almond roca, I'm like a little nervous about. I like almonds. I like toffee as long as the toffee isn't too sweet. So I don't know. We're going to find out. Claire, is that really exaggerated? What is that for the sour green apple? Because I'm very excited. Almond is to A like a Heath bar. Sour things are amazing, but I'm having trouble wrapping my head around a sour donut. Yeah, I'm not entirely... We'll find out. Await my review. Yes, I was very sad last night that they didn't have any of the pumpkin pie left at the end of the night, because that's what I would have had, because that pumpkin pie donut, oh, so good. I was chatting with the employees when I went down there to pick up a donut last night, and they were saying that, like, it's actually much more exhausting when they do this October, November, December seasonal only 1 month flavors, because they don't get time to be sick of the donut flavors by the time that it's over. So, yeah, I'm not the only one who's struggling with keeping up with all these seasonal flavors. I mentioned this on the forums, but I just found out there's someone who makes vegan homemade Pop-Tarts, like extremely expensive looking Pop-Tarts, because they're like individually handmade and decorated gorgeousness, and they're like, it's like run out of their house, and you have to like sign up to get them on Sunday, and then like you can pick them up on Wednesday. So I am gonna maybe try to get those. There's 2 pickup days, Wednesday and Saturday, so I'm gonna see if I can get a Pop-Tart for maybe next week's live stream. I mean, it's Halloween next week, so yeah, we'll find out about the Pop-Tarts. I really contemplating if Pop-Tarts count as related enough to the world of donuts to be justified in this live stream. But, you know, if I get compelling information, I might. So who watched the presidential debates this week? Also, respect if you did not, especially if you just decided that you already have voted because you voted early or mail-in voting, whatever you did. Congrats for voting and getting it all done. Or because you just, you know, wanted to lower your blood pressure. I think that's all extremely valid. Ooh, I got some tea on the... Quite a lot of people did not watch any presidential debates. Claire doom-scrolled the whole thing on Twitter. I went the opposite direction. I kind of was very light on my Twitter use during it. And I just focused on eating nachos. And that was my way of processing what was going on. So Claire said, I don't think I've watched a debate since 2000 when I couldn't vote. Yeah, I think I watched generally all of them, although I even watched the early Republican debates when Donald Trump was running along with like 16 other people in that like super wide field in 2016. And I watched it because I thought it was funny that so many people were running that shouldn't be. Oh, I'm hearing an echo again. I don't know where that's coming from. It just switched the screen too. That screen keeps switching, just so you know. Claire said, I don't have a TV, but I had to go to bed. I had my phone in bed, thus Twitter. Yeah, we don't have a TV, like a real TV anyway, but we, all of the debates now are streaming. So not that I'm trying to encourage you. Yeah. Ash didn't see the value regarding voting, and I really value not getting mega stressed out by that. I think that is extremely valuable, not getting mega stressed out by it. I think that's an excellent choice right out of it. Well, it sounds like a lot of you didn't watch the debates, but what I will tell you about this one, I will say they were allowed to turn the mic off, and so it was not the catastrophe that international media covered as though it was a catastrophe of the first debate, when it was just a shouting match where you couldn't really understand anything going on and it was just terrible. This one was like way more controlled. You could tell that President Trump's like press team had like really schooled him, and essentially I'm sure what they told him is that it played really poorly with voters, that he essentially was so argumentative in the last one, because it didn't do well for him. I think he thought that like that strongman presence and like treating it as though it was a rally and no one else was on stage was a good tactic, and it seemed clear that his team was like, no, because he was a lot more controlled. So they did have the opportunity to mute the mics, and they did mute some of them. The first one, they could not mute the mics. But regardless of the actual debate recap, we don't need to do that. You can go find someone who's good at doing those things. What really got me about this entire thing was that there was this Trump on trade is unique, and Trump economics around trade is very fascinating because it goes counter to a lot of what the United States has typically done on the national stage. And one of the things that really stood out was that Trump talked extensively about how he had he's trying to get rid of the trade deficit with China, and that getting involved in this trade war, which he did get involved in a trade war with China. A trade war essentially was an escalation of tariffs on both sides. And he essentially stated that a couple things. One, that the trade deficit meant that money went directly to farmers, with which he also claimed that came from China. That is fundamentally untrue. The money that went to farmers, which is true, quite a lot of money went to farmers, that was actually subsidies that went directly to farmers that were hurt by the tariffs. So soybeans were a prime example. We actually export quite a lot of soybeans to China. We are, the United States is one of the largest exporters of soybeans in the world. It's a rare thing that good that we are actually doing a lot of exporting of as far as agricultural goods. And China is one of the biggest consumers of them, partially because they use a lot of soybeans in a lot of their traditional cooking. So because of the tariffs during the trade war, soybean farmers got hurt a ton. And the price of soybeans by the bushel dropped almost by like over 60% during the trade war, because essentially there was no longer enough demand for it because they could not get Chinese consumers to buy it anymore. When you jack up the tariffs on it, what it does is it makes it more expensive to foreign consumers, and if you are relying on exports for foreign consumers, then you will have the prices jacked up. And Biden was quick to say that was taxpayer money that went to them, and that was fundamentally true. Taxpayer money did go to those farmers because farmers were able to apply for subsidies, which is really what props up the U.S. Farming economy entirely, is farming subsidies. But there was additional subsidies for farmers that could prove they were hurt by the trade war. So a trade war with China is different from a land war in Asia, right? Fun fact, kind of not. And there's two reasons why that's not. So a land war in Asia, if you don't know, from A Princess Bride, a classic phrase is never get involved in a land war in Asia. And a trade war with China is kind of similar to a land war with Asia, because a trade war with China, they have tools at their disposal that we do not have. One of the key tools that they have at their disposal is that they are the second largest holder of U.S. currency reserves. And because they are such a large holder of U.S. currency reserves and U.S. Treasury bonds, that means that they are able to manipulate their currency in order to make their prices advantageous or not advantageous to U.S. consumers vis-a-vis other countries. So kind of let me get into what a trade deficit is. So the United States every country has what's called a current account. And a current account is essentially just kind of the balance of international trade, and that includes foreign investments into the country and investments by citizens of that country to foreign countries, as well as like in and out. So one of the things that I think is really important to understand about trade deficits is it's just a number. It's not actually saying like you owe this much money or to other countries. It's not like a real gap. What it is an accounting balance that says this is how much that you are importing rather than exporting. So the United States has run a trade deficit across all countries in the world. It has the longest running and the largest trade deficit since 1975. Why since 1975? Well, two key components. One thing is called the Bretton Woods Agreement, and the Bretton Woods Agreement is essentially what made everybody get off the gold standard, and what switched to the U.S. Currency becoming the world reserve currency rather than gold being a world reserve currency. Bretton Woods Agreement was kind of a multinational currency agreement that happened. And that is one key reason why the United States has run a trade deficit since 1975. And that is because part of the current account and the deficit is other people holding your debt and your currencies. If we are the number one reserve currency in the world in the United States, guess what that means? We would have to export a heck of a lot of goods in order to possibly overcome that. And there's two reasons why this is actually generally good for an economy. All a trade deficit means is that we consume more world resources than we export. And this is true of goods generally. So it is, you can have a trade deficit over a given period. You can have a trade deficit with a single country, or you can have a trade deficit overall. We have most of those. You just, at any given period, we have the largest trade deficit in the world, in addition to we have them with a lot of countries. There's two countries that Donald Trump, in his particularly strange take on trade deficits, that he's focused on. That has been China and Mexico. One thing that we've seen across the board with trade deficits, this is true not just in the US, but in other countries, is that trade deficits are kind of like levers that you can kind of pull, and unless you do massive structural changes to an economy, which Donald Trump has not done, if you change a trade deficit with one country, like, for example, getting involved in a trade war, then guess what happens? The consumers in that country just get goods from other countries. So what happened in the United States is when we got involved with the trade war, it actually mostly hurt U.S. consumers. The increased cost of goods, because we import so much stuff from China, when we do tariffs, that is not us charging China money. That is us charging United States consumers for those goods. So the most recent economic analysis I saw was that last year, the trade war actually cost the average American household about $1,400 in lost income because of the raised prices because of the trade war with China. One of the other things that happened is that even though our trade deficit went down with China, guess what also happened? Our trade deficit went up with Vietnam, it went up with Korea, and it went up with Mexico. So, because we are a consumer economy, we import things from other countries. It is extremely interesting. So I've mostly only talked about pre-pandemic because I think that's an accurate view of trade policy. That being said, some really interesting things happened to the United States trade deficits since COVID-19. Between February, the official beginning of the recession, and July, the trade deficit widened by more than 70% in the US. And that largely has to do with the fact that the US-based part of our economy, services, took a huge hit, obviously. And instead, we switched to retail. Guess what retail does? It imports a lot of stuff from other countries to sell to US consumers. And it did drive up the cost of food, rural, but we don't import nearly as much food as we do other things. But it did drive up the cost of food. The only foods that it didn't drive up the cost of were things that we were previously exporting to China. So it isn't necessarily a bad thing to have a trade deficit. There are advantages and disadvantages to having a trade deficit. One of the main reasons we have a trade deficit in the United States, and we consistently have had it since 1975, though, remember, is because we have a highly desirable currency. So one of the advantages of a trade deficit is that we're able to borrow money relatively cheaply, and use it to do domestic spending, to, theoretically provide healthcare. Wouldn't that be great? All the things that we spend domestic spending on. Military. But one of the other things that is good about it is it means that US consumers and companies can actually make more by investing in other countries because their interest rates are higher than our interest rates, because our currency and our bonds are more valuable to foreign countries. Does that make some basic sense? So, there is another big thing that is important around trade deficits, because one of the big reasons why trade deficits can be a negative for economies is that they can fundamentally reshape other countries. So, one big problem here, and you see this if you live in a big city with foreign investors buying up apartments. So if you live in like a city like Seattle or New York, where you see a lot of foreign investors buying up empty apartments in order to invest in the US, well, that one reason that it happens is the really bad end of a trade deficit could be that that companies, assets, currencies, everything just gets entirely bought up by foreign investors. So that is one reason why there is a huge downside to trade deficits. And that is something that you have to control by having some currency depreciation. So that, like floating exchange rates, if you have a trade deficit forever, you will eventually have downward pressure on the currency. However, our downward pressure is offset in the United States by how much other countries hold our currencies, and the fact that one of our major trading partners, China, does currency manipulation in order to keep their currency cheaper vis-a-vis the US dollar. Does that make some basic sense? You don't really need to understand exchange rates too much to understand trade deficits, but it is kind of helpful. So one thing that Trump proclaimed in this whole trade deficit was that they were trying to save the US manufacturing industry. There is a huge downside to the trade war, is that there are close to, what is the number? 2.4 million Americans who have manufacturing jobs that are directly tied to trade. And guess what? We actually lost more jobs to impacts from trade in the manufacturing sectors because, for example, the cost to get equipment, the cost to get various inputs for US manufacturing from abroad, those costs went up, and that put pressure on manufacturing industry to actually contract. So instead of creating jobs in manufacturing, it didn't really do that. And manufacturing employment barely grew in 2019. It grew much less than employment generally grew. The other downside so here's one upside. For example, some things that get manufactured in the US, but a lot of consumers would prefer to buy from abroad because it was previously cheaper, those sectors went up. So an example was like washing machines. Durable goods produced in the US, because of the tariffs and the trade wars going on, those did have kind of a boost. But overall, we lost more manufacturing jobs because of the result of the trade war than we actually gained. Yeah, there's one other element that I want to bring up about Donald Trump's trade policy, which is I just want to if I I don't know how much I can be clear about the way that Donald Trump approaches trade is uniquely Donald Trump, and it isn't really rooted in economic policy whatsoever. So it is very fascinating to study because the choices that he is making around trade are very different than what, you know, even Republican predecessors and conservative predecessors have done. So yeah, it's like, it's frustrating to look specifically at like how it compares to other things because it is so different. But there is one key element that makes Donald Trump trade policy even harder. Is so when they replaced NAFTA, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement, that essentially allows almost no tariffs between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It is free trade between there. And NAFTA has been opposed by a lot of unions, trade groups. By no means do people necessarily think that free trade is great. If you don't like globalization, you definitely don't like NAFTA. But if you don't like globalization, you probably don't want us to have a trade deficit whatsoever, because you wouldn't support the idea that economies are open with other economies. But so he replaced NAFTA with this new agreement, and then, which was essentially a replacement of free trade between, you know, renegotiated between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And then pretty much the next week tried to then negotiate and add more tariffs to Mexican goods. And that made literally every country kind of look at the way that Donald Trump's word around trade policy didn't seem to mean anything. And that can negatively affect our trade relations with countries way beyond that, because a lot of countries saw that there was kind of no point to negotiating trade deals with the United States because it could just change. And that was because, like, generally Donald Trump's word wasn't really protecting things. Rural said macroeconomics makes my head hurt. Yes. Okay, who has clarifying questions? Because I just kind of lectured at you for 20 minutes about trade policy. But, like, are there things that are confusing about trade deficits to you? Because I think a lot of people maybe don't really understand what it is. Oh yeah, I do have a graph I was going to show you. Of the United States trade deficit over time, just so you can see that it's consistently been this way for a really long time. There we go. Beautiful. There is a trade deficit. So the trade deficit was improving in 2019 if you think that less trade deficit is better, but it's essentially tanked in 2020 post-pandemic. And it essentially, what the trade deficit did, along with some other economic policies of Donald Trump, is it ran the economy extremely hot. And there was one thing that did that really benefited workers, which running the economy extremely hot, as long as there are low interest rates, it means that there's, a really tight job market. It ends up being an employees market, and it did raise wages for the lowest portion of workers, which is something that low wage workers had not seen essentially for 20 years. And right before the pandemic, we were seeing the largest increases in wages, which are overall stagnant in the U.S. economy, but we were seeing the largest increases at the lowest end. Some of that was happening because of minimum wage increases that were coming by economic policy or by public policy in different states, but part of that was because it was extremely competitive for employers to recruit people, and that was largely an effect of Donald Trump running the economy hot. Trade, the tariffs was part of that, but not as big as you might think. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Is it time for a donut while everybody processes economic policy? I'm going to eat the almond roca one first because I'm most excited about the sour apple one. I may need something to get the chocolate taste out of my mouth. All right, are we ready for a donut? Okay. I do want some questions. I need to test you to make sure you're listening. This is since you came to Macroeconomics 101 class today. All right, almond roca. Let's see how it tastes. I want to make sure I get some almond pieces in there. The donut is great. The topping is very donut. It's very... It kind of tastes more like chocolate than I kind of was hoping it would taste like. I thought it was going to be like more like just pure kind of toffee.
A little crunch is the toffee.
I'm positive about this one. The donut part is great. The simplest answer for running the economy hot. So Claire asked, explain a bit more about running the economy hot. I don't fully understand what that means and what the consequences are. Running the economy hot is a very The Economist kind of phrase. You can tell I listen to a lot of The Economist. It's very economistian phrase, and what it implies is a series of economic policies that will try to force a lot of investment. So one of the key elements in there being extremely low interest rates. However, interest rates, luckily, are not set by the executive branch. They are set by the Federal Reserve, which is not elected, not political, theoretically. And the Federal Reserve essentially was raising interest rates. They raised interest rates 4 times during the first 3 years of Trump's term. When interest rates go up, that means that we are seeing that there is that essentially capital is freeing a little too easily. So that would mean, like, if there's low interest rates, for example, people are more likely to buy a house. Because payments are going to be lower. They are more likely to expand businesses because loans are relatively cheaper. One issue that you can have if you have extremely low interest rates is that you can end up with a slightly deflated currency. Or, a currency that is not inflating. And I know that inflation sounds like this big, very scary thing. But inflation is part of what happens when you raise interest rates. And inflation generally implies that the economy is growing and getting better because it means that you've got, you've kind of gotten to the point where you have enough investment in the economy that you kind of want to slow that. Does that make some sense? If interest rates are too low for too long, then one thing that can happen is that you can end up with even more inflation simply because the currency supply can expand. If interest rates are really low for a long time, and part of that is a result of the United States buying and increasing the currency supply. There's essentially 2 levers that the Federal Reserve has. One is interest rates and the other is the currency supply. So that's why, so if we have like, running the economy hot, for example, is like a series of different policies that you can make. But what it resulted in was like these record stock market profits and everything that we were seeing. That's one of the reasons the economy was doing so well, which the economy doing so well by Donald Trump's measure is the stock market, which doesn't affect the average worker that much. But the stock market returns look good for him. And as of January, it really looked like Donald Trump was likely to get reelected because the economy was doing so well as far as the stock market measures, as well as, GDP growing up, things like that. And usually incumbent presidents get reelected when the economy is doing well. They're so sorry. I know I just crammed a lot of different things in there. Let's eat this sour green apple. All right, sour green apple donut. I'm like so excited about this. I'm like way more excited about this than I am about that almond one. Oh, it is sour. I have a very eager donut tax taker over here. Nope, I'm going to pay you in quarterly payments. You don't get them yet. It is very sour. Does that make more sense for folks that were wondering about what the economy running hot? I'm guessing this was not a situation he probably could have sustained even apart from COVID. I imagine all presidents try something similar. Not necessarily, because not all presidents inherit an economy in the same state that Donald Trump did. So, putting economic stimulus and tax cuts in was one of the things that Donald Trump did in order to try to boost the economy and run the economy hot. And those were things that, for example, Obama did, but Obama did that because he was in the greatest recession that the United States had seen until COVID. What's the verdict from behind the camera?
Top is nice and sour, the rest tastes like a donut.
Yeah, the top is nice and sour, the rest tastes like a donut is the phrase, and I would agree with that statement. It's like nice and crispy on the outside, but it is sour. It's like, it doesn't taste like Sour Patch Kids. It doesn't taste like that really candy kind of sour that's like mouth puckering. It tastes more like a natural sour, like lime or something like that. The economy is spicy. Correct. I guess I can't get past the phase running it hot implying for me that soon the engine will explode. Well, fun fact, I have no idea about engines, so I don't really understand how that relates, but I believe you. And, yes, there was a belief that we were going to have a recession relatively soon because the economy is cyclical. And we were seeing the largest, we were seeing the lowest unemployment for the longest time. We were seeing these record high numbers in the stock market sustaining for a really long time. And we knew a crash was coming. We just, I remember the first week of the, COVID really hitting. I think that was March 15th, where everybody was like, oh, it's real. Things were shutting down, everything. On Marketplace Money, Kai Rizdal, was answering a bunch of listener questions, and someone had sent in is this the recession that we kept talking about being right around the corner? And Kai was like, whatever other recession was coming, it doesn't matter. This recession is that recession now, right? There can be different triggers to a recession, but the economy is cyclical. And what we are seeing right now is really frustrating because part of the consequences of the economic policies that are being put in place mean that the stock market is actually doing pretty well in the US, while we are seeing economic devastation on a worker level and a personal level. So that has a lot to do with the way that public policy has been structured. If you run your engine hot, you won't have a vehicle for long. Time is measured in minutes, really. Well, yeah. I will say, sure, I believe in that. I'm going to finish this donut, y'all. It looks kind of more like a regular donut now instead of a long one. It has little crossies on the bottom. It's very cute. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah. Little, like, crosshairs. I'm not gonna finish this one, I don't think. When is Lily gonna understand that she doesn't like anything with chocolatey flavors? If I stop getting donuts with any kind of chocolate in them, I would probably stop being disappointed, except for that one bagel donut. It does look a bit like a baked potato now. A sour apple baked potato is way weirder than a sour apple donut, in my opinion. Man, I want a baked potato, though. The marketing for chocolate or the marketing for the economy, Ash? Ash says, I mean, the marketing and overall popularity is deceptive. Are you talking about chocolate or are you talking about the stock market doing well? Because I feel like both are related. Oh, I was informed that since I ended up ordering a planner today, I had to inform the live stream that I have 2 planners on the way to my house now. So I was just told that because I made that choice, I had to inform the live stream. I think it was intended as a form of shaming, but I don't really care. So yes, I have 2 planners on the way to the house. I bought a planner not that many months ago and decided it's not working for me, and I am going to gift it to a friend. You ordered a planner. Yes, I ordered 2. And I am fine with it. Here's the thing. My business made a lot of money this month, and office supplies are tax deductible for me. And I decided that it was a necessary business expense. I just the cost for 2 planners is so small in comparison to the cost that I have spent on shipping supplies, bags, and shipping itself this month. So I have a planner problem. You think I have a planner problem? Do you want to see? So I hold on to all of my planners. Actually giving this planner to a friend is only because I can like pull the pages I've already done out on it. And she was thinking about getting it, so it's like, oh, might as well. It lasts through next year. I have saved all of my planners for the past like 15 years. And I thought it might be kind of fun to do a video on them. I do have a planner problem, but I'm also fine with it. Like, I end up buying 2 planners a year on average, and I feel okay about that choice, and I've kind of just accepted it as a cost of doing business in my head. So I will also say I could not get planners for 8 years because I could not write by hand, and I'm like making up for lost time. So I just want you to know. But yeah, I was thinking about doing a video of all of them. I hate undated planners, and it was recommended that I do a rant video about why I hate undated planners, but the irony being, oh wait, that's the wrong one. The irony being, I was gifted a undated planner at work, and it is the only time I've finished an entire year in a planner. But because it was gifted to me at my job, I decided that I would shell out for stickers that like show, I'm sure there's nothing secret in these planners. Also, I don't understand how time works. Wait, there we go. I shelled out for stickers that date the weeks because my big frustration with My big frustration with undated planners is that, like, I don't want the extra work of having to look at another calendar to fill things in. And while I can write by hand now, I do still, like, get a fair amount of pain in my hands if I have to write a lot. And so the idea of just sitting there and filling in numbers in a whole planner for, like, 2 hours sounds really awful. But, you know, look at these pretty spreads. Some of them are very pretty. Some of them are more boring. Yeah, some of them are. Anyway. Trying to find a particularly pretty one to show. But I finished the whole planner, and I would like you to know that. That's all I really want to accomplish with this. The other advantage... Oh, yeah, that one's, like, extra pretty. The other advantage with this planner was that I worked a job early in the morning where I had a lot of downtime. I worked front desk at, like, a high-end gym. And I did actually do, like, a fair amount of work for my own business, like, at that job during the downtime. I had to, like, essentially check people in, and then I had to do a bunch of cleaning. But it meant that every Monday I just set aside downtime to fill in my planner for the week and, like, decorate it. And I probably wouldn't, you know, do that anyway. I always find it so satisfying to finish a journal. Yeah, I'm really frustrated that I can't, like, journal by hand. It's too much. Like, I've started a lot of journals in an attempt to journal by hand, but, like, a planner is about the maximum amount of writing I can do. I have journaled for a long time with, like, a 1 line a day journal. I've kept one up for, like, I don't know, 7 years now or something like that. Like, pretty much since I started being able to use my hands again. So I guess 6 years. And I do, like, a little daily, like, short thing on my phone, but it's super frustrating because I want to be one of those people that, like, has, like, a gorgeous, like, Hobonichi or, like, Midori, like, you know, a little wheel of how I spent my time and, like, keep a journal. And I love reading, like, historical journals of, like, you know, Benjamin Franklin's journal and David Sedaris's journals are two of my, like, favorite books to reread. But I am clearly never going to be that. And I don't really find that journaling on my computer has the same value to me. So, I got a very fancy bullet journal this year with thick pages, but then I never used it because I didn't feel like I used it. The pages didn't feel worn. Isn't it funny how our brains do that? Yeah. Anyway, so one of the planners I bought with points. So I have Amazon business points, and I try not to spend them I try to spend them only on business things because they're connected to my business card. And I won't spend them on stuff that's tax deductible that, like, is normal cost of goods sold and stuff like that. So the only things I've been buying from Amazon lately are, like, shipping supplies because it's just, like, unfortunately the most reliable place to get it from. Try not to buy that much from Amazon, but it end up being kind of essential when you run an online business unless you go really out of your way to buy from other places. And I end up wildly disappointed a lot of the time when I do. Yeah, so I got one of them, and I love the layout of that one, but I don't like the design, but I was like, you know what, I'll get it as research for my eventual taking over the world with a planner company. And then the other one I got doesn't start till next year, and it's like a twin book, where one half is like a notebook that you can pull in, but it's like the same size as a regular notebook, and the other half is a 6-month planner. And I think it will actually work for being able to kind of use similarly. Like, I think I can add stuff to it pretty easily to make it look like the layout of the planner I got that hopefully will work. So this is my plan. Emily says, David Sedaris' entries where he's like, I met this guy, and you're like, oh, I know him, he sticks around, are my favorite thing. I know, it's so great. Although, I will say my favorite part of that journal is not, like, later. I do like the New York bit, but, like, I particularly appreciate all of his entries when he's, like, really broke in Chicago. The, like, doing a lot of math bits are a little less fun just because it was such a dark, weird period in his life. But, yeah. I like reading journals of people who later become successful when they're not successful to kind of... For me, one of the things that I find so interesting is how people handle money around creative people. Like, creative people who end up becoming financially successful and becoming successful. And I am, like, very interested in how they viewed money before they had a lot of it. And I feel like David Sedaris's do an excellent job of that because he was poor for so long and he was constantly whining about being poor. So. Kids in the future are probably going to be more captivated by 2000s TED Talks and YouTube podcasts anyway, so there's bound to be someone in 3020 that's talking on a live stream about how your life works. I like the idea that would be true. I don't think that's going to be true. I don't think we're going to have any of this preserved. I think all of this data that we're building is like the system of it is going to collapse. Very brief poll. There's a podcast I want to start that has no practical purpose, but it's related to the future. That's why I want to bring it up. So, rewatching Dark Angel, which is set in post-apocalyptic Seattle in the year 2019, it was made 20 years earlier, and there's so many interesting things about it, about how they interpreted the future and, like, what they got right and what they got wrong, and also, like, what they talk about under an authoritarian regime in depression, and, it has a lot of big ideas. There's also some parts of it that really don't age well. I was very disappointed to find out that one of my favorite characters who's a lesbian is a TERF. But I think that, like, I think it would be a very fun podcast to go episode by episode about it, watching it in the year that it theoretically takes place. So we're watching the first season right now, which takes place in 2019. However, the second season takes place in 2020, which we are in. So, okay, well, some people are very passionate about, Ash will be there. That's great. That show was mainly, like, I watched it, a little bit when it was originally on, and I was, like, 14 or 15, I think, when it came out. And it was, like, mainly about seeing Jessica Alba, like, race around on a motorcycle and a bicycle and, like, everybody telling her she's gorgeous. But now watching it, I recognize that I definitely... I appreciate other things about it. And frankly, I'm a little annoyed at how much they constantly are telling Jessica Alba she's gorgeous as, like, a plot point. Latitude says, I'm too young for whatever this show is. It wasn't even, like, madly commercially successful. It only had 2 seasons, but it was James Cameron, aka guy who made Titanic and Alien. It was, like, his television debut, and the budget for the pilot was $10 million, which is so much money for a pilot. So it was very, like, high budget. Anyway, it is actually, it's still a pretty good show. They did the final season as, like, a comic book, I believe. So, she's a genetically engineered, was genetically engineered by the government to be a child soldier. And then the United States, was hit by an electromagnetic pulse, which essentially wiped out all the telecommunications and plunged the United States from being a world superpower into being a developing nation, essentially, and a poor nation. So, yeah. Rural says, oh my god, Dark Angel was 20 years ago. I know. Isn't it terrible? But what's really fascinating is, like, they have, like, drones that can target and survey people. And, like, when that came out, that was, like, the idea that, like, the government was flying drones around on the street was, like, what, post-apocalyptic reality. Except that, like, what's hilarious is their drones are giant, and, like, we have plenty of government video surveillance now, and drones are part of it, and the drones now kill people, but the government kills people with drones, and they're, like, this big. So... Ash said, I love how poorly those shows age too. What I am really surprised about is how little the show ages poorly. Like, aside from some things that, like, aside from some things where they, like, you know, predicted how technology evolved, and then there's also the justification that, like, you can write off any technology difference by just being like, well, an electromagnetic pulse wiped out the United States, so, like, of course technology development was, like, behind. So, yeah. I'm surprised to hear it wasn't commercially successful. I feel like it was a huge thing. Don't think I ever saw it. So... it wasn't super commercially successful considering how much money they put into it. It was, like, their pilot had, like, the most amount of, like, people that had watched on that time slot or something, but that's because they had an insane marketing budget, which is probably why you felt like it was, like, a huge thing. But it really did start to end up losing viewers by the end, which is why it got canceled. So... oh yeah, and then the other thing is, like, the other main character is essentially a video blogger, journalist. Like, there's so many, but it's like he does it on TV because there's no, like, YouTube. Anyway, clearly I should have a podcast about this. We were trying to figure out a way to make recording a podcast about it be very easy, like, not add a ton of work to our lives, because I don't expect this to be, like, a big thing that I need to do a lot of. So I've always heard about this show, but I thought it was way longer than 2 seasons. I'm more likely to watch it knowing it's short. Well, what I will say is that I don't know if you're like me and are mostly used to British shows and miniseries and Netflix shows at this point, but it is only 2 seasons, but it's 2 seasons of the length that TV seasons used to be on network TV. So it's like 2 22-episode seasons as opposed to, like, a Netflix series that'll have, like, 8 to 10. So, or a BBC series which will have 3 every several years, like Sherlock. Or Fleabag. Although I think Fleabag was Channel 4, not... Anyway, I had a big crush on that fella. Oh yeah, I guess I see the appeal. I definitely had a giant crush on Jessica Alba. I definitely printed out pictures of her in that show and put them up on the inside of my closet, which is where I ironically hid all of my pictures of girls on the inside of my closet. Yes, there's so many levels of symbolism to it. I used to watch Buffy back in the day, and I'm glad we're going away from that 22-episode season. The thing about Buffy that was frustrating about the 22-episode season is, like, there was one season where they, like, didn't know they were gonna have to make an episode, and that's how we ended up with an episode where they're all just dreaming on the couch for the entire episode. Like, it was very clear that on network shows back then that needed to have that many episodes, that there were some episodes that were just filler episodes. But yeah, like, one of the BBC shows was just like, yeah, anyway. Restless season 4 finale. I like that you know that off the top of your head. I appreciate that. I've seen Buffy, like, all of Buffy several times, but I used to get them all from the library, so, and check them out. Back when one checked out DVDs from the library. Alright, I don't know what we did this hour, but you got a speed class in international macroeconomics. Brianna had the same, I had a big gay reason I watched it too, like you with Dark Angel. Yeah, I mean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer aged more poorly than Dark Angel. And they're both from the same time period. And the one thing I will say that both shows have is that their hot girl clothes are that 2000 era fashion that's come back that I really don't like, with like the spaghetti straps and the like that slit of like skin and like the lowrider jeans. I have been informed that some people love lowrider jeans, and they fit their bodies really well. It's confusing to me because lowrider jeans were always like madly uncomfortable, but it has something to do with like your thigh and waist ratio. But I was schooled on Twitter by several people that are excited that lowrider jeans are back. But that early, as the kids are calling it these days, the Y2K aesthetic, whew. It's like the word. I did not like that era of fashion. There's a reason I didn't dress like that in that era. So Emily says they have going out tops. They really do have going out tops. Ash says, I don't know what this hour was, but thank you for the distraction from finding student loans. Thank you. Anyone who enjoys lowrider jeans is wrong. That's how I felt, but I had numerous people of like different ages telling me that like they're really comfortable if you have a certain kind of body shape. Like if you have don't have really. So my problem is I have like a relatively small waist, but like really big hips and thighs. And so I need those high-waisted jeans, which were extremely uncool and were called mom jeans in a not flattering way back then. But were also extremely hard to find. That was the other thing is like, I mean, back then I was super tiny because I was a figure skater. So I was like a 00 or a 000. It's like not even in a size that is real. But it was like everything was in the current fashions. And so it was extremely frustrating to find jeans that wouldn't like fall off of me or like cut off circulation in my thighs. So yeah. Y2K aesthetic. Oh no. Oh yeah, it's back, honey. It's back. Sorry to inform you. It is 100% back. Anyway, I appreciate that for some people, they are in the opposite situation where, like, I have been blessed by current fashion styles and that I can go into, like, Primark and find $8 jeans, well, I guess £8 jeans that, like, actually fit my body relatively well because the fashion that is in style right now works for my body shape. And I appreciate that as fashion changes, there will be people that can just stock up on all of the lowrider jeans their heart desires and then hopefully wear them for quite a while. So, Emily says, I want jeans that go up to my nipples, and if they take them away, I will be bereft. Same! I like everything to come about here. So... the name is pretty cringy. It's, the thing is you have to realize that the people that call it a Y2K aesthetic were, like, not alive for Y2K. So, also, we've all universally accepted that aesthetic is now a noun. Which, like, 3 years ago, as an old, I was like, have you gathered that aesthetic is now just, like, you can have an aesthetic and something can also be aesthetic, and that just means it's like, it means that it's like beautiful. Anyway, there's so many different ways to use the word aesthetic now that didn't really exist. But yeah, they're like pulling up all of the music videos, like the hip hop music videos, like TLC and like Pink and everything from 1999 to 2000 as like fashion inspiration. It's weird. It's a very weird world that we're in. But I gotta say, we really didn't have leggings. Like, leggings were, like, not normalized in 99. And I do think that leggings are I don't think they're going anywhere. Like, leggings were, like, you barely had them. We can thank Lululemon, really. I mean, there's a lot of criticisms to have against Lululemon, but they really popularized leggings as pants, so... I ripped my mid-rise jeans at work. It's COVID casual yesterday, and I'm so sad to have to shop for more jeans. Shopping for jeans is, like, a miserable experience. I just didn't own jeans for, like, 12 plus years, and it wasn't until I realized that, like, the style was more likely to fit me now. Like, obviously they're all too long for me, but what isn't too long for me, so... Claire said, literally on Sunday, my sister asked me to explain how aesthetic was now being used, and I could not. I know, it's like, it's pretty, but maybe, like, it could just mean, like, there's an ambiance to it. I feel like we used aesthetic as a noun in academia, and then it was weird when other people started using it, too. Yeah. Emily says, wait, are the Zoomers gonna get into low-rise Jinko bondage pants? Oh, honey, go search on Depop right now. Vintage Jinko jeans are going for like $100 right now. It's like... Brianna says, yeah, I always taper to 28-inch inseam. I found that Uniqlo is selling some with 4 different inseam choices. So what was great was when we were in, was that Singapore? So Erin is also on the shorter side of vertical and has a lot of trouble finding pants that don't need to be tailored. And we went into a Uniqlo when we were there, but it was all like the Singapore lines for Uniqlo, not the American sizes, and got a bunch of pants, and we thought, oh, you can just order them online when you come back, except that when he ordered the exact same size in the United States, they did not have the same inseam or proportions for like the exact same pair of pants in the exact same size. I had a friend who worked at Pendleton, which is like a US clothing manufacturer, and they did a bunch of like supply chain stuff. And they said that the Japanese sizing, they're super skinny. They're like a randonneur, so they're like rail thin. And the only size that they could wear that Pendleton made, because for the American market, everything was too big, like the smallest sizes. So they had to get into the Japanese supply chain for the Japanese sizes in order to fit into them. So regional variations. This is actually why I do a lot of my shopping when I am abroad in Asia, because... it's harder for me to fit like tight-fitting Asian like jeans. Like I pretty much can't get jeans from Asia just because my thighs are like very large and don't tend to fit like the average size in Asian sizing. But I can get like pajama pants and they don't drag on the floor, and I can get skirts and they're not all mid-calf length. It's great. I love it. Emily says normalize leggings. I think leggings are well normalized now. I love playing like the old lady at the rink, but I am constantly telling skaters, like, you could just wear leggings now. Like, that's like the normal average thing you wear on the ice. We were not allowed to wear anything but dresses even to practice, because it was considered like you wouldn't be allowed onto the high-level practice ice if you were wearing pants, which were also not allowed in competition. And you had practice dresses and competition dresses. And now you just, like, wear what you would wear to, like, work out on the ice, except, you know, you have, like, an extra pair of tights and stuff and bunga pads and things like that underneath. But anyway, I'm always like, didn't you know that back in the day, our coaches wouldn't even let us on the ice unless we were wearing a dress? That wasn't also, just to be clear, that wasn't specifically my rink. That's like most rinks. Mid-rise works for my dog. In the phrase Y2K aesthetic is being used as an adjective. Is it though? Because isn't it a noun? Because Y2K aesthetic, you wouldn't say that noun has the Y2K aesthetic. Y2K aesthetic describes an entire category. Isn't it a noun? It's a thing in and of itself. I don't know. I am not very good at this kind of stuff. Talk to me about trade deficits till the cows come home, but ask me to identify the parts of a sentence and I back slowly out of the room. Literally every new fact you share about ice skating is bananas. Yes, it is a banana sport. It's real dumb. I have so many problems with the sport, but the problem is that I'm good at it. Are you saying they use Y2K aesthetic as a complete adjective to describe other things? Well, they're using it as a complete... No, Y2K modifies aesthetic. So it's like, why, like, aesthetic is, I don't think it's an adjective. Because adjective has to modify a noun. Y2K is not the noun. Aesthetic is the noun, and Y2K is the adjective. Yeah, exactly. Y2K is the era. So it would be like 90s aesthetic would be the other way to say it. Or like, an aesthetic is like a category. Why isn't Y2K the noun? Because Y2K is describing the aesthetic. Yeah, like 90s fashion. Fashion, you can sub in Y2K for 90s and fashion for aesthetic. Wait, Y2K bug is an adjective?
No, Y2K is the adjective.
No, yeah, Y2K is the adjective, yeah. Yeah, the aesthetic is Y2K versus its aesthetic, where aesthetic is modifying the subject. It can be both. Pretty much aesthetic can do whatever it wants. You can put it in any part of a sentence. It's kind of like fuck. You can just, like, it can modify, it could be an adverb, it could be a noun. Which aesthetic? The Y2K one. Yes, that is correct. So that would make it, right?
It's a noun.
Welcome to English class. Can you tell that I'm much more confident in economics than I was in English class? Clearly, I don't understand how kids talk these days, which as it should be considering I'm 34. I mean, I'm 33, but I understand aesthetic because I'm still active on Tumblr. Also because I skate with people who are 12. Okay, now that we've identified sentence parts of this, then it's, yeah, I feel like that's, I don't know where we're ending, but wait, is Y2K ice cream just astronaut ice cream? This is an important question. I'm active on Tumblr, but I'm pretty sure I only follow people who are also 34. That must be a very different part of Tumblr than the part I'm active on. Oh yeah, because internet would be a useful discussion here. I need to get Gretchen to, like, come on and explain this. How do we relate linguistics to economics? And I can get Gretchen to come on a show. I have no idea if Y2K ice cream is a real thing. Did anybody Google it? Is it a thing? Is it just astronaut ice cream? I bet it's just astronaut ice cream. Oh, you love Gretchen. I won't listen to Gretchen's podcast, but I like her a lot as a human. I know her from, like, conferences. But I have this very deep block with linguistics. I'm just like, you start talking to me about linguistics and I shut down. I need to get over it because I think it would probably benefit the fact that I'm, like, currently trying to learn 2 languages with different alphabets than English, the United States, as though we have our own alphabet. I mean, we kind of do. Yeah, I met Gretchen at Patricon, I believe, but it turns out that her partner is someone I know from a company I used to work at. So I listen to at least 4 different linguistics podcasts. I would really like to learn IPA, but every time I've attempted to learn IPA, my brain shuts down. So I don't really know what to do about that. I think I need to see, like, a linguistics therapist because I have, like, deep issues about it, and my issues with it are going to impede my life backup plan of running away to a foreign country to teach English. Because I can't teach English if I am terrified of, like, all linguistics related things, and if I can't identify if something is an adverb or a noun. So I probably need to figure that out at some point. The recent episode she did on translations, anchored in the new Beowulf translation, was super fun. See, I had to live through Humanities 110 at Reed College, and I feel like I never need to learn about another Beowulf translation in my life. Well, if someone can come up with a topic related to personal finance that I can lure Gretchen into being on the podcast for, I can pitch her on being in the show. Anyway, I hope you all have an excellent evening. Tell me what you are most excited about this week. And please, if you are in the United States and eligible to vote, let me know if you have voted already, or if you haven't voted already, what your voting plan is in the comments. How does language affect economy? Ooh, I am actually really interested in, the political economy of establishing a separate language for a country, right? Because, so there's all these variations on Serbo-Croatian. I'm trying to learn Croatian. I'm failing miserably. So I'm trying to get a passport for the country, so I feel like I should be able to say some things. And Serbo-Croatian, Croatian, Serbian, they're all relatively similar languages. There's essentially 3 dialect variations on the language that are mutually intelligible, but they, as of 1991, they separated and they pretend they have different languages with the breaking up of Yugoslavia. And I'm curious to know, aside from ethnic tensions and ethnic cleansing and wars, if there's some sort of economic changes to that. I don't know, might be fascinating. Ash is gonna hear how much financial aid will be available to them. Oh, that sounds awesome. How about why we use animals to describe markets? Ooh, very fascinating. I think I know why. I think it's canes. I think that's the answer. I need to read Wealth of Nations again, clearly. Emily bought wonton wrappers and you're going to try to make dumplings again tomorrow. Did you fail last time or did you succeed again last time you made dumplings? Are you just going to make dumplings again or are you trying to make dumplings again? What's the active verb in that sentence? Emily already voted by mail. Awesome. I really hope 22 fails. Yes, please let Prop 22 fail. Oh, I should do another episode on Prop 22. It's been a while. I mean, it's probably too late now. I'm going to vote in person after work day of. I don't anticipate lines to be long where I live. They never are. Yay! Well, it'll be fun to vote on the actual day of. I haven't gotten to do that since the 2005 election. So I'm excited for you. And I would like to live vicariously. Claire, it will be Halloween within a week of this specific minute, so that is what I am excited about. Awesome. I will be doing the live stream in costume next week for sure. We will see what the actual costume ends up being. I have many to choose from. Latitude is very excited to stop doing projects and start studying for my midterms. Are you actually very excited about that, or are you just trying to manifest that by saying it? The US has a different language that's mutually intelligible with the rest of English. Correct. Also, we have many dialects of English within the United States, like Creole, which is, I think, technically a dialect of French. I don't know if they're their own language. And we also have American Sign Language, which is used by several other countries, but is different than other languages, that other deaf sign languages, including it is completely different than British Sign Language. Yeah, has its own date format, units of measurement. Yeah, it doesn't have its own alphabet, though. That's a key element. Claire also voted by mail. Awesome. Okay, Emily has to drop to get the dough rising. Awesome, go get your dough rising. We're running late these days. Flashcards are something different. Okay. I still feel like you're trying to manifest this. Haitian Creole is its own language. Okay, see, we've got the economist jumping in here. Yes, American Sign Language is totally different to Australian Sign Language, but they're both ASL to make things more confusing. Ooh, that is very confusing. The Canadian Sign Language is, they tried to make their own Canadian Sign Language, but nobody was using it, and everybody was already using American Sign Language, and essentially the deaf community rebelled in Canada. There was also a lot of, I mean, similar to every country in the world, but there was a lot of really terrible things happening in the deaf community in Canada. Like, you know, having their hands tied down to keep them from signing, which is their natural language, and, you know, isolated schools where they weren't actually learning things, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, American Sign Language is now the official deaf language of Canadians. What the fuck, Canada, what? PJ, I'm sorry to inform you, I almost guarantee Australia did it as well. It is very common, deaf experience, in history around the world. Yeah, it was actually Helen Keller who, you know, a lot of people know just because she was deaf and blind, but she was actually a huge activist for the deaf and blind community, as well as a suffragette and, like, radical communist. But one of the things that she did was actually work on policies for deaf inclusive schools, and Helen Keller was like a worldwide diplomat, and one of the things that she worked very hard on was actually integration of it. Guadalupe University in the United States, which is a deaf university in the United States, is extremely special around the world and was used as a model in other countries. Canada seems like it's super nice, but they have their skeletons too. Yes. Like every country, they have their skeletons with how they treat Indigenous people in particular, and also how they treat a lot of people with disabilities. So they are not unique among rich nations, nor are they unique among global nations. So, all right, we've gone way too long, and our lights have clearly given up. Do not take this red as an indication of what party I'm voting for. If you're in the United States and you have not voted yet, please vote this week or before next Tuesday. And I hope you all have a lovely week. Thank you for spending some time with me this Saturday. Oh, good. We have at least a little bit of blue there. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of your week. Enjoy yourself. Maybe look for a Dark Angel podcast at some point. If someone thinks of a funny name for a Dark Angel podcast where we rewatch it, let me know. I'm kind of stuck on the name. All right. Cheers. Bye.